For those of you joining over on YouTube, getting ready to go live, going to see how this goes on TikTok. Going live later than I normally do. Um, had started to go live about an hour ago and saw that the Rational Boomer was live, so I ended mine, jumped in his stream, and his is now ended near as I can tell. Don't know if he got taken down because of um, mass reporting from Trump supporters or what. So I'm going live over on TikTok, waiting for people to come into the room, um, and we're going to see what happens here. For those of you joining, we're talking politics, news, um, just things going on. Um, going to be talking about, you know, cabinet picks and what's going to happen with that and how um, I think the next 4 years, what they're going to look like, what we can do now, what protections we have, all kinds of things. Um, so for those of you joining, just getting started here, going to be talking news and politics as we get some people in the room. Going to be talking about everything that's going on. Uh, you know, we've got cabinet picks we got to talk about, what potential safeguards we have against this Trump presidency, and how bad potentially could this Trump presidency be. And it could be not as bad as we're expecting, in part because Republicans in Congress are going to end up having to uh, block some of the stuff, the most egregious stuff, if it has to go through Congress, just because they know they have to get reelected. And that's a big thing right there. Like, knowing that they have to get reelected, they're not going to do things like gut Social Security or turn around and um, uh, cut out food stamps, things like that. That's all going to have to go through Congress, and they're going to have a fight on their hands in their own party as far as that goes. They are not going to be unified. I mean, they haven't been unified the last 4 years. Um, they barely got anything passed through Congress now, and um, you know, we have to hope that they aren't going to be able to get anything passed as is. They're going to have a very slim majority in the Senate, only like 3 or 4 seats, I think. Filibuster is going to hold, and filibuster is going to prevent people from, or prevent the Republicans from passing a whole bunch of it because they can't get around the filibuster. Republicans aren't going to nuke the filibuster because they know at some point they are going to be the minority party. And when they're the minority, they love the filibuster because it prevents Democrats from accomplishing anything. Democrats are going to use the filibuster as much as they possibly can the next 2 to 4 years that Republicans are in control. Now, I say 2 to 4 years because we have midterms coming up in less than 2 years. And Democrats could potentially end up back in control in the Senate and the House during midterms. If Republicans don't get much accomplished, or what they do get accomplished is not good chance Democrats end up back in control, at least in Congress, and help prevent any more damage. Typically, during the midterms, the White House party ends up losing seats in Congress in both chambers, typically. Presidential election years, it varies wildly, but as far as the House goes, they have a very thin margin. Last number I saw, they had just gotten over the 218 margin, and that was with Matt Gaetz having won and then resigned. So, Matt Gaetz being out of the House is going to open the door for a special election, and special elections get weird. They change how things go. You never know who runs in a special election. Like, special elections, they come fast. They're not nearly as long and drawn out campaigns. They're usually not held on the typical election day in November. And I'm handling my own moderation because I'm pretty sure I don't have a moderator in here yet. But, they hold these special elections on, it might be the second Tuesday in January or something like that, outside of the normal thing because they're special elections. That changes who shows up. They usually, generally less voters turn up for special elections, but if control of the House is on the line, you never know. Democrats could have a better showing. And they're going to have such a thin margin in the House, they're not going to be able to, get anything passed because they can't agree with themselves. Remember the last Trump presidency, they had both chambers of Congress the first 2 years and couldn't hardly pass anything because they couldn't agree. It wasn't until the second half of the Trump presidency that we ended up getting the House back. And that's when the Democrats were able to start blocking a bunch of what Donald Trump said and did in that second half. Now, as for the Senate, as I said earlier, the filibuster is going to be our best friend. There's a lot of things that they may want to do that are going to require getting around the filibuster, and they're just not going to get Democratic support on some of the most egregious stuff. And some of the stuff they're going to have to push through Congress is going to be things like getting rid of departments. Like if they want to completely get rid of the Department of Education, they can't do that without Congress. And as much as people like Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk say with their Department of Government Efficiency, they're just going to, shutter departments and gut jobs, things like that. That requires Congress. It does. And they can't do it without Congress. And effectively, without Congress passing something, they won't have any money for doing any of that. Handling my own moderation again. Any good news today? Not a lot of good news, honestly. Hasn't been a lot of good news since the election. I mean, we did hear that like 30 Senate Republicans have said they're not going to support Matt Gaetz, so he's dead in the water. He will not end up as Attorney General. And, take that for what it is. We're still waiting to see if they end up actually releasing that ethics probe into Matt Gaetz and how bad of a thing Matt Gaetz actually has. Matt Gaetz resigned when he did, just ahead of that ethics probe being released, trying to get around it. Please tell me how and why Trump was allowed to run. This should be illegal. If you're referring to him running as a felon, the reason he was allowed to run is because the Constitution doesn't say he can't. There are 3 requirements to be eligible to run for president. And those 3 requirements are: you have to be 35 years old, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to be a natural born U.S. citizen, and you have to be having not been elected twice. That's it. Those are the only 3 things. That's why he was able to run as a felon. would Trump's tariffs need to go through Congress? I'm not sure. I think he's got unilateral power to do some up to a certain percent. But again, if he gets too wild, they're going to come back and, they would easily get bipartisan support to go around him. Now, the question is, as a convicted felon, you can run? Yes. As 14th Amendment, problem with the 14th Amendment is it's never been used. 14th Amendment has never been used as a way to defer anybody from running for president. They could try it, and they did try it in Colorado with the primary, and that's where the Supreme Court said, well, you can't kick him off of the primary ballot because of it, because one state can't make decisions for the rest of the country. But after that, it was never brought up that I'm aware of in a federal court. No federal court has decided nationally as to whether or not what he did with January 6th ends up being considered an insurrection. Jason Turner, what do you mean 1919? Courts might be stacked in his favor to a point, but even the Supreme Court that he put together has ruled against him. They haven't given him complete control, and they still won't. Because if they go too far against the Constitution, it could affect them. And I just don't see that happening. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about Tulsi Gabbard being connected to Russia. She probably won't make it through the Senate confirmation process. As I've talked about in several lives, the senators have to go back to their own states and win re-election. And what control will Trump have as president? Same power that he would normally have: executive orders, sign laws, commander-in-chief of the military, direct our diplomatic efforts. He's not going to have everything, and Congress is going to push back. They pushed back against him last time, and they have less reason to side with him now because he can't run again. He can't get them anything. He can't, other than maybe helping them in the midterms in 2026, he can't do a whole lot. He brought them to the dance. He got them all three branches of government, sure. But if he gets too far out of hand, they know they have in 2026, they have to get reelected. So if they go too far crazy, their own voters will side against them, and they won't do any of that. You got to look at it as a deal that they have. They have to assume the midterms are coming. Midterms are only 2 years away, and every seat in the House of Representatives is up for grabs. Every single one. And 33, 34 seats in the Senate are going to be up for grabs. And that's, depending on how many members of the Senate get pulled out for cabinet positions. So far, we've only heard about Marco Rubio. which brings it up to 34. Well, thank you for the follow. I do try to make sense. I look at things logically, analytically, and just try to make everything make sense. Will you have human right protections at all? You'll have some. It's just the bigger things like healthcare protections that would have happened in a Kamala Harris presidency with a Democratic controlled Senate aren't going to happen right now. They are going to be left to the states. Those things are still going to happen. You still have your right to vote. That's not going to change. And they would need a constitutional amendment to change that. You still have the 14th Amendment for equal protection. And a bunch of the stuff where they say they want to take it back would require laws to be passed or constitutional amendments. And I just don't think they've got enough people in Congress to pass a lot of laws to scale a whole bunch of stuff back. And they definitely don't have the votes to even start considering amendments. That would take 67 senators and 325 or 350 in the House. They just don't have those kind of numbers. They need 2/3 of the House. Then beyond that, to pass an amendment, they need 38 states to sign on. They don't have 38 state legislatures that would automatically pass an amendment. Passing an amendment takes years. Even some of the quickest ones they've passed took time. It took prohibition was around for what was it, 3 or 4 years, and they passed the repeal of prohibition, and that still took like a year and a half, I think, to get done. I don't remember the exact time frame, but once they decided to start repealing prohibition, it didn't happen automatically. It took time. Same with, they passed the 22nd Amendment after FDR died in office. They decided they didn't like the idea of presidents being able to run for an unlimited number of terms. Congress passed it. It took them almost 4 years to get the 22nd Amendment through and ratified by all the states. Amendments are a very slow process. They're a very, very slow process. I mean, and they really should be. You are altering the foundation of our government. The fact is that we have one document that can be altered. It shouldn't be a quick process that we can change all the time. Time for a new one term limits on Congress and the Senate. Term limits on Congress would be great. There's a problem with that. The only problem is, in order to pass an amendment for term limits on Congress, you have to get it through Congress. And I just don't see that ever happening. Politicians by nature like power, and they wouldn't, have any sort of reason to limit their own. It was much easier for Congress to pass a term limit for the president because that was the other branch. That wasn't, that wasn't them. They also like money, yes. I mean, if they could get some of the money out of politics, that would be great. We have, we do have some protections yet. Like I said, Congress isn't going to be willing to take up a bunch of the crazy stuff. They're already pushing back against some of his picks, and they have no reason to pass through some of his worst ones. They just won't. We pay our senators and congressmen the exact same as the state they're representing. I don't know what you mean by that. As far as I know, all senators, I believe they make the same base pay based on, I think it's either same per year or it might be based on tenure. Same with representatives. I don't think it has anything to do with which state they are representing. Some people have suggested that they should get paid no more than the median income in whatever state they're from, and that would encourage them to do things to help out the low and the middle classes. Yeah, they all seem to become millionaires yet make medium salaries. Oh, you hope I'm right because I'm making sense. Well, I. Uh-huh. Handling my own moderation here. 1 second. Hey, TJ. I wasn't sure if you were going to jump in or not. Did Mike's Live get shut down by MAGA supporters? I figured. I was waiting for him to come back on, then decided to jump on myself. I mean, I am trying to make some sense of it. I looked at everything ahead of the election. I thought Kamala was going to win. She should have won. Every bit of data said she should have won and it shouldn't have been nearly as close. The only thing I can come up with is there are a lot of people that couldn't vote for a woman, that wouldn't vote for a woman of color. They also, I think some of them were irritated by how she became the Democratic nominee. Some of them were mad at Joe for their day-to-day economic issues, because while the large-scale economy looked great, nationwide unemployment way down, record jobs numbers, stock market hitting record highs, it was still a struggle day to day. And people were looking around going, well, you're saying the economy's good, but I'm struggling day to day and I can't make rent. They laid the blame for it at the feet of Joe Biden and by extension Kamala Harris. I think that was part of it. There was definitely a section of left-leaning politicians or left-leaning voters that didn't vote for Kamala because of the two wars going on, because they hadn't stopped yet, and basically said Joe didn't do enough to stop him, so they blamed Kamala. You had people, I've read about people that were Googling on day of the election, didn't even know for sure that Joe Biden had stepped aside. You had some people on the left, the far left, that if they don't get everything they want, they take their ball and go home. They didn't. Kamala Harris tried to encompass way too many people, I think, into her campaign and into her camp. I think she spent too much time campaigning with Liz Cheney. And I loved the Liz Cheney endorsement. I thought that was great, but I think toward the end she spent too much time campaigning with Liz Cheney and not focusing enough on what she was doing, because they were mad at her for campaigning with Liz Cheney and worrying. It could be my internet connection. Hang on, let me try to fix it. Equal protection of the 14th Amendment. What does that mean? Basically, the 14th Amendment says that everybody is treated equal under the law. I am supposed to get the exact same treatment as the next person, as the next person, as the next person. That if you are an American citizen, which it defines being born under the jurisdiction of the United States, which unless the Supreme Court rules any differently, means anybody born in the United States that isn't born to someone with diplomatic immunity is automatically an American citizen, and you are supposed to be treated the exact same as anybody else and not treated worse for any reason. Let's see. Um, and I don't see, speaking of the 14th Amendment, I just don't see them being able to pass anything or do anything to mess with birthright citizenship. I know Donald Trump has said he wants to do something with an executive order saying he's going to tell government agencies not to give citizenship to people born here automatically unless their parents, I think, unless the mother is an American citizen or something. But he just can't do that. That would be immediately challenged in court because that goes against previous Supreme Court rulings. And it would probably make its way to the Supreme Court. And I just, even this Supreme Court, I don't think will fuck with that. Because that, changing the definition of what it means to be a citizen would be chaos. There has never been any sort of, since the 14th Amendment has been passed and ruled on, there really hasn't been any sort of condition put on that you have to be born to citizens or you have to have, you know, anything like that. Um, yeah, they. I don't. I just don't think they're going to challenge that. I don't think they'll do anything. Same with, they would need to go through Congress, I believe, to do any sort of mass denaturalization, and I just don't think that would pass. We've never. Yeah, you're right. We've never seen anything like this. They could try, but I don't even think this Supreme Court would be willing to touch um, the idea of birthright citizenship because every American citizen right now has birthright citizenship. You get your citizenship because you are born here, regardless of anything else. And that, now you're not even talking about one group or anything. You're messing with everybody. I just don't think they would be willing to take this up and side with them. There's a lot of things they would be willing to mess with. I just don't think that would be one of them. Now, if they wanted to try to pass a constitutional amendment, they could try, but again, they don't have the votes for it. They don't have 2/3 of both houses in Congress. They barely have majorities in both houses. And they don't have 38 states that would be on board with stripping away citizenship from people. It's a losing proposition if they even try it. Oh, well, thank you. Um, I just look at things the way I see it. I know a little bit about a lot, and I try to make sense out of what I'm seeing. It's easy to get wrapped up in the fear, and I think that's one of the big problems is that people get scared um, about what could happen, and then once they start getting too scared, they quit looking at things and going, "Oh, well, that really couldn't happen, or that wouldn't happen, or anything like that." And we all do it. It's a natural reaction. I believe that is probably in part of what inspired FDR with his quote. You know, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. This Supreme Court will require ID voting, guaranteeing red control for years to come. I don't think so. I don't think they will. Um, because have you heard anything about them talking about IDs and things like that now? They've gotten off that topic. They moved past it because they won. They were only going to continue to talk about it as long as they lost. It was a talking point. That was the big thing. They wanted someone to blame for their loss, so they were making up a scenario of undocumented people voting in every election, trying to scare people. As I've said in numerous videos ahead of it, they they wouldn't. What was I going to say? Oh, undocumented people wouldn't try to vote because they wouldn't risk getting caught and charged and deported, things like that. They wanted to stay under it. Who would enforce my 14th Amendment equal protection? That's usually where enforcing it and interpreting it comes under the courts for part of it. That's where if they try to pass too egregious of a law, it goes to the courts, gets struck down. And even if they do pass some of this stuff, it's going to get tied up in the courts for so long. It'll be a couple of years before it ends up being actually enforced. We can do to them what they like to do to Democrats, and that's tie implementation of programs up for years and years in courts and appeals and things like that. You know, that's part of it. We can tie it up in the courts and, wait out the clock at that point. Don't let me distract you, but you're speaking the truth. Oh, well, thank you. It's not overly distracting. I get distracted myself just talking. I kind of forget where I'm going sometimes. But no, we got to lean on the courts. The courts are going to be in our favor. Donald Trump is going to actually walk in. I read an article, I don't remember the number, but they are pushing through as many judge appointments as they possibly can to between now and January 3rd. Donald Trump is going to have the fewest number of judicial appointments available to any incoming president. And that's the problem I'm having with Dems. What's the problem you're having with Dems? Not speaking truth? Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my feed. I've got good signal through my Wi-Fi, so I don't know why it's cutting out. Oh, Dems are too soft. They like to play by the when they go low, we go high mentality. And that just doesn't work. You got to get down in the mud. That's one of the reasons why I thought Kamala Harris was doing such a good job going into this election. She was battling him like a prosecutor, making what I thought were good hits and doing a great job there. But apparently, at least a good section of Democratic-leaning voters just couldn't bring themselves to vote for her. Should require a government-issued photo ID before being allowed to vote or federal for state or federal. Thing is, a lot of states have already had that. I had to present my ID to go vote here in Iowa. It's not nearly as big of a thing as what people like to make it out to be. In fact, most of the people that have gotten caught cheating and voting when they're not supposed to have been voting Republican. There was a lady in Minnesota this election whose mother had died. She filled out her mom's ballot after she died, signed it, forged her mom's signature, signed her own signature that she had witnessed her mom signing it, and then forged her mom's signature as her own witness. Oh, and I'm already getting a violation. Look at that. Wonder how long I'll be able to stay up. They took down, I was in the Rational Boomers live earlier. He got flagged with so many violations. He got his taken down. So, we'll see. I was going to go live much earlier, but then I saw Mike was live and I backed mine off. I decided to wait until after his came down. He got taken down mid-sentence. And that was kind of interesting. A lot of states have had ID laws. Like I said, I just don't think they are doing nearly as many, not nearly as many undocumented people are voting as what they want you to believe. It was just a boogeyman and it was also somebody for them to blame when they lost. they assumed they were going to lose. They were getting their excuses in advance, and then the unthinkable happened, and they actually won. And now they're not talking about it. Now they're not talking about people needing IDs and only citizens voting. Funny how that works. They win, and suddenly it's the most secure election we've ever had. You know, it's almost like they were lying to the American people. Democrats lost 10 million voters from 2020. Why did they abandon their party? Well, some of the numbers I'm seeing are saying that a lot of those voters voted down ballot but didn't vote for top of the ticket. For varying, and I'm hearing varying reasons. Some blame Joe for the economy, and by extension Kamala Harris. They didn't like the two wars going on. Didn't like how Kamala became the nominee. Thought there should have been a primary, even though there wasn't a lot of time to do that. It's hard to say. I think part of it also had to do with the fact that during 2020, because of the pandemic, they made voting super easy. Everybody got mailed all the stuff, in a lot of states got mailed voter registration. They got mailed an absentee request form. They got mailed their ballot, etc. It made it easy for them to vote, so people were more willing to take it to do it when they could just do it right from their house. And Republicans are still mad. They are. They've won and they're still mad. They're still angry. They're angry that we haven't reacted the way they did. I think that's part of it. We're not out whining, crying, protesting, screaming fraud. There's not 80,000 lawsuits going. And we're not acting like that. We're not doing what they did. We said, okay, now we got to deal with what's next, and they're moving forward. And some Republicans are mad about it. That's why they're coming in and they're rubbing in everybody's face that they won and everything. I think some of them are also worried that they have to back up what they said now. And they're afraid if it's going to actually happen. Like, if things are going to work the way they were told. Yeah, we're not like that. But they are, and they assumed we would act the same way when their side won. And now that we're acting civilized and normal, it makes them look even worse, and now they're mad. They're mad that we're not stooping to their level and justifying their bad behavior. We're hearing about people. Yeah, why are you mad? You won. Exactly. But they're mad because we're not stooping to their behavior. And I think some of them are already irritated that they know some of the stuff isn't going to work. What is due process? Due process would be things like you have to be read your Miranda rights. You have to, you have to be questioned a certain way. Things have to move in a certain, you have to be, if you are arrested, you have to go before a judge to enter your plea in so much time. Due process also is things like making sure the law is applied the correct way. So, like the evidence tree, and making sure that they got their warrant the correct way, etc. That the law works the way it is supposed to work for everybody. Let's see. Oh, well, thank you. Like I said earlier, I know a little bit about a lot. Um, and, we're just going to have to keep moving forward. The next 2 years are going to be bad, but they're not going to be as bad as they could be. Now, when these tariffs start hitting and prices of everything starts going up, we're going to hear a lot of screaming and crying and whining out of the people that voted for those things. And we'll have to see what happens because of it, but everything's going to go up with the tariffs. And if they do the mass deportations, a lot of things are going to go up. A lot of things that require migrant workers who do the jobs a lot of people won't do. A lot of your construction, your roofing, farm work, orchard work, slaughterhouses, places like that. They're going to be facing labor shortages because people don't want to go out and do those jobs. So they find people that do them, and unfortunately, those end up being people who came into this country undocumented because they just want to work and make a day's wage and live their life. I'm actually beginning to suspect what I think might happen with like the mass deportations. I don't know if it'll be nearly as bad as what people are expecting, or if they won't come out and say, we're going to be doing a lot of things about, the mass deportations and the illegal criminals that are here in this country, and then like 3 weeks later come out and say, well, we got rid of all the criminals that were here illegally and actually had done nothing but take credit for it. That wouldn't surprise me at all either. You know, and we're gonna sit back and chill. You can do it because I'm not. Oh, as far as working some of those other jobs, exactly. I mean, and I know people who work very hard doing those jobs who are American citizens, but that's not the point. The point is the majority of American citizens don't want to do those jobs. Pedro says we are in the FAFO stage. Yeah, we're in the find out stage, and they're finding out the hard way. What about Social Security? I don't think they touch it. Again, probably have to go through Congress. I don't think they do much with Social Security. It's just going to be a thing where if Congress knows if they try it, they're going to have a hard time selling it to their supporters. And a big chunk of the Republican voting base is baby boomers who are on Social Security. I know my parents are baby boomers, lifelong conservatives, and that was one of the things that got them voting for Kamala Harris this time, was because they were afraid that their Social Security was going to go away if Trump got in. What about Medicare and Medicaid? Well, as far as Medicare, goes, I don't know. Again, don't know if they try to touch it because you're dealing with a large chunk of the Republican voting base. Medicaid, I know they said they want to try to cut it. They want to start cutting it out. They want to cut into Medicaid as far as they can, because they want to use it to help offset another round of tax cuts for the rich. If they will doom the elderly and the homeless. They don't care as much about the homeless, but they do care about the elderly, because that's a big chunk of their voting bloc. And congressional Republicans understand they have to get reelected. I think that's where they push back against Trump. If it involves money, it has to go through Congress. It has to go through Congress. The Congress has the power of the purse. They can authorize spending. Now, it is up to the Treasury under the president to actually spend that money the way Congress dictates. But they have to pass the money through Congress. follow the money, exactly. He has them in his pocket. Congress, not really. He's not as useful to them anymore now that he's been elected. Um, they needed him to get elected and get where they are. They don't need him anymore. He's term limited out. He can't run again. He's not eligible in 2028. Just not. Again, they would have to pass a constitutional amendment to change it so that he could run, and that's not happening. They don't have the votes there. And as far as midterms, look what happened in the midterms in both 2018 and 2022. He cost them seats. He cost them the House in 2018. They were expecting a red wave in 2022, and they only took the House by 5 seats. They were expecting to have the House by 40. And even this time, they could actually end up keeping the House of Representatives with a slimmer margin than what they had going in. Like, they could have the House of Representatives literally by a 1 or a 2 seat margin. I haven't seen the final totals. Last I saw was 218 Republican, which is just enough to be in control. But he's also pulling Elise Stefanik and Matt Gaetz resigned. That's 2. That realistically brings them down to 216, and there'd be special elections. Wait till he cuts veterans' budget. That's the thing. They always talk about cutting the VA stuff, and with the way Donald Trump has acted in regards to our veterans, it's completely ridiculous. But yet Republicans like to say how they're for the veteran and they're for our troops and everything. It makes no sense. You might not be able to because you talk about him making it through his 4-year term because of his age and diet. That's entirely possible. Unwanted Human asks if I'm a vet. No, I'm not. Yeah, he might not survive his 4 years. And again, they don't need him after this. If he starts going too far off the rails to where they can't defend it anymore and they're afraid of losing their own power in Congress, they could end up impeaching him on their own. They could. It is not outside the realm of possibility. Remember, and this is going back a long ways to when this is going back a long ways for Republicans, but go back to Nixon. Nixon had the Republicans, his own party, said, "We got the votes to oust you, to impeach and remove you." They had the votes. That's one of the reasons he resigned. You would be more okay with JD at the helm than Trump because Trump is too unhinged. Exactly. Why are Democrats saying Trump is going to end Social Security? Because he said it. He wants to go after Social Security. Republicans have been going after Social Security for 40 years. They've been wanting to do away with it. If something were to happen, even if they 25th Amendmented Trump or they voted to impeach and remove Trump, and the Republicans did either of those two things, JD would be walking a very fine line after that. I don't think he would be nearly as unhinged as Trump, especially if they impeached and removed him. Because wouldn't you be scared shitless if your own party just removed your boss for doing crazy, stupid shit? Wouldn't you be walking the line? Yeah, Rick Scott's been pushing for getting rid of Social Security for a long time. Yeah, it's in Project 2025's playbook, but a big chunk of that playbook does have to go through Congress. Like I've been saying, they were willing to back the play up until the point that it got them elected. But now that they're elected, they don't need Trump and they don't need that playbook. They have to be smart about what they do because they know they have to get reelected in 2 years. Boomer probably told me to listen to you, but he says a lot. It's just so much. Yeah. Oh, I guarantee you Mike has mentioned me more than once. I've been a guest over on the podcast numerous times. I was just on, I don't know, a few days ago. One day last week. I'll probably be on again here sometime soon. I love being on the podcast. I love talking to Mike. We always have a good time. Yeah, 312 times Trump's name appears in Project 2025. Yeah, it appears there a lot. A lot of his former staffers helped work on it, but Project 2025 has been around in some variation. A lot of the stuff in it they have been trying to do going back to Reagan, if not before. It's just been under different names and different things they want to do, but again, still needs Congress. And congressional Republicans know they have to get reelected. And you're going to get pushback from some of the ones in the middle, especially the ones that are in the middle that are up for election in 2026. There's going to be 33 or 34 senators up for reelection in 2026. And it's going to be more of an even field. This was a bad scenario for Democrats going into this election. 34 seats were up for grabs, only 9 were held by Republicans. Democrats were having an issue with the Senate going in. They had, like I said, they were only defending 9 seats, and 2 of the seats Democrats had were considered potential losses, and that was Joe Manchin in West Virginia. You had Tester in Montana. But he is dead weight. Oh, yeah, he's dead weight to Republicans. He's dead weight now. They had to prop him up going in, and they rode his coattails into power with all 3 branches. But now they're going to have to do what they can to maintain that power. Let's see, coming up on an hour. It is kind of like watching a Scooby-Doo movie. I mean, any of these picks so far have been like villain of the week type picks for his cabinet. Um, there's another Fox News host he picked for something I heard. I can't remember now which department that was. It just came out today that he picked this one. It's another part-time news host on Fox Business. This one does have a little more qualifications in that they've been a politician before, but still another Fox News personality because they say nice things about him. And that's what he cares about. He wants people around him that are going to pat him on the back and tell him he's a genius and give him that ego boost that he needs. That's why he kept doing the rallies. That's why, even after he won the first time, he kept doing rallies every now and then because he wanted that ego boost. Junkables Junk says, so very sad we lost Sherrod Brown. Actually, you want to hear something funny? Heard that Sherrod Brown is considering running for the open seat to fill J.D. Vance's seat and could be right back in Congress in that special election. You read that members could be tried for treason. who would charge with treason for what? Going against Donald Trump? Yeah, wouldn't that be funny if Sherrod Brown lost this election, wins the special, and gets right back into the Senate? Now, if they were talking about charging members of Congress with treason, Sherrod Brown was a senator from Ohio, if that's who you're talking about. He was up for election this year. Everyone thought he would actually do better than he did, and he actually lost. But he could be running um, for re-election in the special election to fill J.D. Vance's seat. These special elections are going to be interesting because, as I talked about way early on in the live, they have special elections on, usually it's still on a Tuesday, but they're outside the normal schedule, and they end up, you never know how they go. Plus, it's going to be a much shorter campaign cycle. Um, and in the case of like Ohio, when you got an already known name of Sherrod Brown running against anybody, they're going to go in with a little bit of a advantage because people are going to look in to that box. Oh, I know that name, and possibly check that box. That's why people like, and I hate the guy, but our senator here, Chuck Grassley, who's been um, around for ever. He's been a senator longer than I've been alive, but he keeps running. He's 91 years old. And people go in, oh, I recognize that name, and they vote for him because he's been around. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're gone. Yeah, he's been in Congress like 400 years. Oh yeah, no, Chuck Grassley's 91 years old. He was born in 1933. And I usually refer to him as Chuck. I'm older than chocolate chip cookies Grassley. He was born in 33. The first printed recipe of chocolate chip cookies was printed in 1938. He is older than the first printed recipe of chocolate chip cookies. I wish I was making that up. He has been around forever. And you have people my age, I'm in my 40s, who have never known him to not be our senator. And you turn around and they vote for him because they recognize the name. And they've heard the name their entire life. Name recognition in politics is big. What's my opinion of Elon Musk? Elon Musk is a dipshit. Um, Gate quit Congress. Can he go back in if not confirmed? Somebody said that, but I don't think so. I don't think he would risk it. He quit to um, end up getting around that ethics investigation, and I just don't think he would try to reclaim his seat. Now, somebody had said that he resigned from this Congress, not the next Congress, so technically he could take his seat back on January 3rd. I just don't think he's going to try to do that because he wants to avoid that ethics probe at all costs, and they're burying it for him right now. My guess is Speaker Johnson and Matt Gaetz had some kind of a deal worked out where Matt Gaetz would resign and Speaker Johnson buries the ethics investigation for as long as he can. Could he run for dog catcher eventually? He could run. Don't know if he would win. Don't think he gets out of the Senate for Senate confirmation for Attorney General. Yeah, he's not. I don't. Do I see limits on Elon's power? Tons. This supposed position he's got, Department of Government Efficiency, doesn't exist. Department of Government Efficiency is something Donald Trump made up. In order for him to have any sort of power, that would again have to go through Congress, because they would have to be given very specific roles, very specific tasks, what their limits are as far as what they can and can't do, how it applies to other branches and what they can do in regards to that budget, all sorts of stuff. They would have to have that all worked out and hammered through as law. You can't just make a government position like that. And beyond that, there's no budget to give them any sort of money. So they would have to pass something through Congress even anyway, just to appropriate them funds to do what they want. And they can't. I just don't see it happening. They want to talk about government efficiency. Well, if they want to be so efficient, then why do they need two people to run it? They can't take out the entire Congress. Courts would toss that. Treason is very specific, like the actual charge is very specific things. Could I run for some kind of office? I probably could. I honestly don't think that's a terrible position to have in government. What's a terrible position? Um, oh, we got somebody from Alaska. That's cool. Running on the running on a platform of cutting government departments just to create one. Yeah, exactly. That's the hypocrisy coming out of the normal Republican Party now. I don't know how. I don't really don't know how successful I would be. It's depending on what position I would run for. It'd be very hard for somebody like me to get elected here in Iowa. Um, Iowa used to be a blue state. I mean, we went blue for Gore. We went blue for Obama twice. He do, he wants to do away with useless government positions. Define useless. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy was talking about, well, you just go into these departments and you say anybody who's got an odd social security number is automatically fired. You know, that's not a good plan. It's more about coming from Iowa. It's more about just how Iowa's shifted red about getting elected anywhere here in Iowa. It's difficult. We've ran some very good, what I thought were good candidates, and they're just not making progress here in Iowa. You know, I expected between 2 and 4 of Iowa's House seats to flip, and we may be lucky if one flipped blue. Um, I thought Iowa had a chance of flipping blue in the national election. Is for president, I thought there was a chance Iowa flipped blue, but apparently they didn't learn the last time. Yeah, they're going to take it in the nuts. Farmers are. They're going to end up getting hurt by the tariffs and trade wars. And that's one of the reasons I hate Chuck Grassley. He came out after the election in a talk with reporters saying, well, if we get into a trade war, it's going to be bad for Iowa farmers. Well, where the hell were you before the election you wanted to make sure your party was in power, so you let the guy running on a trade war idea. You didn't you backed him, and then you can come out and say, well, we really shouldn't do it. I've hated Chuck Grassley for a long time. Goes all the way back, probably even before, to 2016 with the appointment of Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. Chuck Grassley was on the Judiciary Committee and refused to let Merrick Garland's nomination out of the committee. Wouldn't do it. And Merrick Garland never got appointed. Never got voted on, I should say. I mean, they could end up uh, cutting that, starting to cut farm subsidies. And I know that was one of the other things he was talking about is we need to pass another farm bill. Um, Part of the farm bill is what also funds the money for food stamps and some of the other assistance programs. And uh, Chuck Grassley is concerned about it not passing now until after the new Congress takes over and after January 20th with Trump in office. We'll see what Trump wants to do with it. Thing about Donald Trump is he doesn't have a position on a lot of things. If the right person smacks him on the back and says you'd be a winner and a genius and people will love you if you sign this, he'd sign anything. One of the things they wanted to get rid of is they wanted to get rid of the North Atlantic Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. They wanted to get rid of that, and part of that is also the National Weather Service. Now, here in Tornado Alley, we're used to hearing the tornado sirens and things like that when they declare it. Doesn't mean we all follow it, but we're used to it. We know what to look for, etc. We at least pay attention. Could you imagine if that goes away and they try to do something like you either give it back to each state to run their own thing or privatize it and give it to a hand like some company that Elon Musk runs, where now in order to get, weather alert information, you got to pay a subscription fee? It'd be a disaster. Some of us are used to being financially broke, stock up on dry goods. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people saying things like that. Stock up on what you can if you can afford to do so. Has been a good suggestion. Be prepared to help out your neighbors. Um, it's going to be a rough ride. That's where it is going, paying for everything. Yeah. If they privatize a lot of things or kick it back to the states, there are some things that just make sense to have the federal government handle. The National Weather Service is one of them. It just makes sense to have that be part of what we do, um, because it's all about uh, protecting people and making sure people are aware. It doesn't make any sense to privatize it so only certain people have access to the information. Not to mention with social media, even if they did try to switch to some kind of a private company subscription only a few people would ever actually need to subscribe. It would just be all over social media. You get one or two people in every community to subscribe, and as soon as they get the alert, they end up putting it out all over social media, and there you go. Handing over NASA to privateers was the test case to privatize. Yeah, could be. I was always irritated that we privatized our um, space program. I mean, if Neil deGrasse Tyson actually had an interesting point about why we haven't been back to the moon not nearly as much, and how we got to the moon as fast as we did, and that's because we were in a war, a Cold War with Russia, and Russia was in, you know, an effort. They were trying to get to the moon, and they were trying to explore space. So we were willing to pump in the budget to beat Russia. Well, we beat Russia to the moon. Russia backed off their entire uh, space agency, and after that, once Russia started backing off the space program, um, the money from the government for NASA went away. We do need to care about each other again. Um, but I have been seeing a lot of people saying how they're not inviting people who are Trump supporters to their family events anymore. Or they're just not going to those events hosted by those people. And I support that too. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to make the decision for where you want to be with the people you want to be with. And if you decide you want to cut somebody out because of it, with as bad as it can be, I got to get that. Folks, we don't have that kind of money. For what? Kind of money for what? Yeah, we're just trying to get through the day, exactly. We were nice to them the last time Trump was president. We were. And we got through the last time. And we'll get through this time. It's going to be rough for some people. I'm not going to say it's going to be all rainbows and unicorns and sunshine, but we will survive. We will get through. And the Constitution's going to hold. The Constitution will hold. It may look bleak, but it'll hold. Musk should take DJT for a ride to the moon and stay there with him. Yeah. Those two aren't going to survive. Like, Musk won't be part of the government in 4 years. He might not be a part of the government in 2. Especially if something happens and they get rid of Donald Trump and Vance becomes president. Musk probably is on his way out the door anyway. I don't think Vance would keep him around. Where is Vance? I don't know. But Donald Trump hasn't done anything really with Vance since the RNC. He even said at the debate he barely talks to Vance. They don't have much to do with each other. Donald Trump picked Vance because he had to pick somebody. I believe that was all it was. He picked Vance because he needed a VP candidate. And I think, I've been saying this, I might be crazy, but I don't think Donald Trump wanted to win the presidency. I think he just wanted to run. I don't think, he doesn't want to do the job of being president. He wanted to run and have the protections of being a candidate. And to help protect him from his criminal trials. And he wanted the money coming in, the floods of donations, because he was using his donations to pay his legal fees. Well, he fell ass backwards into the presidency a second time, and now he's got to do the job. He's going to do as little of it as possible, but I think he really wanted to just continue to run, and then you know once he got beat by Kamala Harris, I think he was going to announce that he was running for 2028. He said ahead that he wasn't going to run in 28, but I think he was going to announce it and try to use that as some kind of protection from his criminal trials. I don't think he had any intention of actually being president, but I also don't think he had any intention of being president in 2016. I think he ran thinking he could get a whole bunch of money in campaign donations. He was going to get beat early, and then in the primaries, then he'd quit, take the donations and stuff, and you know he would have been fine. Problem was that such a wide field that he was getting the majority of the votes, and they spread the rest of the. Even though he was only getting like 30% of the delegates or the vote in the 2016 primaries, the field was spread so thin he was actually winning. He's probably going to spend a lot of time on the golf course. Yeah, he's going to be golfing a lot on the taxpayer dime. There's going to be a gold room for him in the pit of hell. Nah, that's too good for him. Guarantee it wouldn't be gold. He he likes the feeling of being in charge. Yeah, I would agree. He he likes to feel that he's in charge, but and that's why like Musk, if Musk starts getting in his way, starts upstaging him, starts being their personalities are too similar. Musk and Trump are going to butt heads, and when it comes down to it, Musk is going to be the one on the outs. 428 times Trump went to his property to golf. Yeah, that's 428 times in 4 years. That's ridiculous. That's about 100 golf trips a year. And all of the taxpayer dime. All on the taxpayer dime. That's who Donald Trump is. Yeah, but wasn't he complaining about how many golf trips Obama took and how many vacations Obama took? You better pay Korea the 20 million before they come to us. Yeah, I doubt he ever pays. He doesn't pay his bills. We know this. That's why he's declared bankruptcy 80 million times. I think it's more like 8, but still. He's bankrupted 2 casinos. He's bankrupted this. He's bankrupted that. Defrauded a charity. We know who he is. We know what he's about. Yeah, he doesn't pay his bills. Was When he was running back in 2016, I was talking to somebody in a small town here in Iowa, and I said, okay, if you got somebody putting up properties here in town, and if you had somebody who constantly wasn't paying all of his suppliers and constantly stiffing the contractors, etc., and tying up the payments in courts forever and ever, and then declaring bankruptcy so we got the properties and all the stuff for free, what would you do? And they're like, well, we'd run them out of town with a rail. But yet they still turn around and vote for Trump. Make it make sense. He's trying to sue God so he can't die. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if he does go to jail in an orange jumpsuit. Um, People have been asking about his court cases in New York. He gets sentenced here. I don't think it's been delayed. I think he's got about a week and a half till that hits. Um, and I don't know. Don't know if he gets jail time or what. I think if he gets any sort of jail time or probation, it gets suspended until after um, he's no longer president. If it's a fine, well, he'll find a way to pay it. If get time 4 years, you think he might get 4 years? I mean, I could be wrong, and the judge could end up just straight sentencing him to a prison cell because he's technically not president yet. But I'm not going to hold out hope that it happens. Take his passport, put an ankle bracelet on him. Yeah, I don't know how. Like some countries, because he's a convicted felon, normally he wouldn't be allowed entry. So I don't know how foreign relations are going to work if he just won't be able to, for 4 years, travel to those countries. And if that's just going to be the way it is, they'll have to come here. I don't know. But I think if he does get a prison sentence, it'll probably be suspended till after he's no longer president. Now, that could be less than 4 years, though. It's very embarrassing. We never should have been in a position where there was a felon running uh, for the presidency. The problem is the Republicans, even though they knew it was all coming, they still nominated him. The RNC should have told him well before his daughter-in-law was the head of the RNC. Well, back 2 years ago when he announced he was running, should have said no. You are not running as a Republican, and just said no. And left it at that. But they didn't. They chose instead to welcome him into the fold, let him run, and not hold up their end of the bargain on anything. And then by the time he got convicted, they'd already had all of their primaries. He had already won all of the delegates. And it was all over except for them nominating him. But pre-Donald Trump politics, he never would have made it even into the primary. Karma ain't no joke. Yeah. Um, I've definitely seen some instant karma on some things. And this is probably the death rattle of the Republican Party. Of MAGA for sure, if not the Republican Party. They're gonna I thought they weren't gonna survive this election, but this may be what puts the nail in their coffin. Because they don't have anybody to run in 2028 outside of, um, they don't have anybody that can capture the same base that Donald Trump did. He would have never been considered before he came down that golden escalator. Exactly. See, he came down the golden escalator. He said he was running. He was a joke. Even the Republicans thought he was a joke, but they were so far spread out with the primary. They had like 8 people running that nobody got behind anybody necessarily enough to do that. He was getting 30% of the primary vote, but because there was so many people in the Republican primary, it was so diluted, he was actually winning these primaries by virtue of just the field being so diluted. Vance is just like him. No, Vance isn't just like him. They may think some of the same things, but they're nothing alike. Vance doesn't have nearly that same personality, the same charisma, any of it. He couldn't draw nearly the way Trump could. And the only reason Vance was able to draw the crowds he was because he was connected to Donald Trump. Who do they have? Who do they have that can do what Donald Trump did? They don't have anybody. And that's a fact. They are going to be in trouble. In 2028. They just don't have anybody. Yeah, he had a Jerry Springer style about him. Democrats have a deep bench. It's a little early to be thinking about 2028 and who could potentially run, but the Democrats have a lot more people that are going to be a lot more nationally known who could come out and run and actually do very, very well. Yeah, especially if things go horrible for JD, like for the Trump administration, if these mass deportations and the tariffs do happen and they crater the economy, JD Vance may have to run as the incumbent if he wants to. They may kind of talk him into doing it, but no matter who anybody associated with the Trump presidency is going to be dead in the water. Looking at it, I've compared what could happen to the economy to looking back at 1929 and the stock market crash. You have, after the stock market crashed in 1929, you had FDR come in 32, and he had a Democratic-controlled Congress. They had Congress for the next 20 years, and they had the presidency for 20 years, with the exception of one 2-year term where Republicans had Congress in Truman's term, when Truman was president. Like, if they crater the economy as bad as it could be, they need to, Democrats could end up being in power for quite a while, but they also need to come in with something probably similar to a New Deal style policy that would actually help a lot of people. And then stick to that policy. Democrats are too nice. They're still playing, pre-Trump politics. That's one of the problems. I love Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a great president. Problem is, he's still playing pre-Trump politics. He wants to be bipartisan, reach across the aisle, and do things. And politics right now is not played the same way. I want it to go back to being boring, to boring politics, to where it wasn't the main focus of every day and every news cycle and everything, to where that's all we had to think about. Like, politics used to be completely boring. Pardon his son. I just don't think Joe Biden will. I just do not think Joe Biden will pardon his son. Not saying Hunter doesn't deserve it, but that's just not who Joe Biden is. I really thought that if Kamala had won, that what was going to happen was Joe Biden was going to hold to his word and not pardon Hunter. And then one of the first things Kamala would have done is pardon Hunter. So I don't know what'll happen there, but I just don't think Joe Biden is going to pardon Hunter. It's just not going to happen. Trump treats politics like a joke, yeah. That's in part because he didn't want to win. I don't think he wanted to win the first time, didn't want to win the second time. He doesn't want to actually do the job. He wants the respect of being a politician and being the president, but he doesn't want to actually be the president. To heck with his word, that's his son. Yeah, but he said when it was all going that he wasn't going to pardon him. And Joe Biden is a man of his word, typically. I think he'll hold to it. Yeah, Biden's not going to pardon Hunter. Hope you don't get COVID part 2. Yeah, I mean, I said this before the 2024 or 2020 election. The universe gave Donald Trump a second term in 2020. If he would have treated COVID like the serious issue that it was, and he would have dealt with it as a global pandemic and everything, and followed the pandemic playbook and done all of that, it wouldn't have been nearly as bad, and he probably would have had a mandate for re-election. He probably would have won the popular vote, probably would have won by more than what he won this time in 2024. But he didn't want to do that because he wanted to treat COVID like it wasn't a serious thing and to back off of it and to downplay it and everything because he thought it was going to hurt him in the election. He thought even acknowledging that there was an issue was going to damage him in the upcoming election, so he didn't want to touch it. The universe handed him another term on a silver platter, and he said, I know better. And that's just exactly how he is. That's the type of person he is. Any other area you wouldn't have agreed to a pardon, but they might make him a scapegoat? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Trump got the best care when he got COVID. He got care that was unavailable to most of us. He got treatments that are still unavailable to most of us. Yeah, he gave some of our testing supplies to Russia. Cared more about helping them out than helping American citizens. Because remember what he said about testing? Well, I think we should do less testing because if we do less testing, we have fewer cases. His whole thing was if we didn't know about it, then it didn't really exist. And I'm probably going to be wrapping up here in a little bit. I appreciate the conversation. It was a great night. Started later than I normally do. Um, but I appreciate you all for taking the time to jump in and having this great live, this good conversation. For those of you that caught only part of it, came in late, etc., I record all of my lives. They will be up over on my YouTube page probably sometime tomorrow. I am Analytical Iowan on YouTube, same username. There is a link in my bio if you want to check it out over there to catch this entire live or any of my other ones. I don't really have a schedule for going live or a plan. It's just depends how I'm feeling that day, what the news looks like. um, all of it. And right now, there's not a lot of stuff to talk about, enough to make TikToks with and make a lot of them. So I decided to do this instead. Um, so yeah, go ahead and if you want to check me out over there on YouTube, I recommend it. I put all my TikTok videos up over there, all my lives, and I do have a small playlist of what I call government answers, where I answer common questions about the government and how different things work, like what it would take to become a state or what it takes to pass a constitutional amendment, things like that. I got, I don't know, 9, 10 videos in that playlist so far. Just whenever I see something um, in my live comments, in comments on my videos, other creators' videos, and common misconceptions, I end up trying to make a video to talk about it and talk about how things work, etc. Um, so I have those over there also on my YouTube page. And this will probably be up. Depends on how long it takes YouTube to load. I had an issue loading my one from yesterday. It took it almost 24 hours to finally load, but it did. So I'm going to start posting that as soon as we get done here. And then it'll be up whenever YouTube finishes. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. It's been a great time. I will catch you the next time I go live. All right, for those of you over on YouTube, we just got done wrapping up. Had a pretty good live. Um, and did get a violation. I'm not sure what it actually did with my live, but did get one violation on there. Um, so I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I will catch you the next time I go live.